Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today I'll be playing some Forspoken, and FSR3 has finally been made available to the public. It's been a feature we knew about since the presentation of the RX 7000 series, but it's taken almost a whole year for that to be available, and it's finally time to test it out. It's only available on 2 games so far, and that is Forspoken, of course, and Immortals of Avium. So if you have any of these 2 games, you should find that you are able to use that today. Now, I'm just going to quickly go through the in-game settings here, just to show you how I'm playing the game. So playing at a resolution of 3840 by 2160, the game does have an engine cap of 240 FPS, but if you disable VSync, maybe this doesn't get enforced, I'm not too sure. Now, in terms of graphics, I have dynamic resolution scaling off, memories at the highest, which is high, and textures at the highest, which is ultra high. But I have to explain something about FSR3. So it's basically separated into 2 different options. So you got the upscaling part of FSR, which I currently have at the quality preset, and you also have the frame generation part, which is what enables the fluid motion. Now, for those who don't know what FSR3 is, it's basically a technology that delivers massive frame rates and supports games using combination of super resolution, temporal upscaling technology, and frame generation using AMD fluid motion frames. It's basically an interpolation technology. Now, this is obviously going to introduce a lot of latency, so it just all depends on how much latency it brings in. NVIDIA combats this by using reflex, and I believe AMD have got a similar technology as well. So just to continue with the settings, I've disabled motion blur and depth of field. I feel the game looks better without these 2 options enabled, and I've also have ray trace shadows enabled. You do have the choice for using Fidelity FX and standard. I'm just using Fidelity FX, and that is pretty much it. So the game is practically maxed out with FSR3 at quality, doing the upscaling, and the frame generation fluid motions are also enabled. As you can see, I'm doing around 150 frames per second. Now, this game is very demanding, especially while ray tracing is enabled, so this is actually pretty amazing to see this kind of performance. One thing this game did suffer with, unfortunately, was frame spikes. It was never really smooth, but thanks to fluid motion, that's no longer an issue. Let's deal with these guys. And there is a lot of crocodiles here. Didn't realize there were so many. Okay, let's change my weapon. See how these guys like the spears. There's one left. A lot more than one. Pretty much fighting for my life here. That's got to be all of them now. Wasn't expecting such stiff resistance. This one thinks he can escape. I'm not going to let it happen though. Okay, that is all of them. So as you can see, oh my gosh, there's still more. Can't believe how many Damn, enemies are lurking around here. And there's still more. My gosh. Really kicked a hornet's nest around here. Okay, finally I've killed everything. So you got a good look of what FSR3 and FrameGen can do, even under a lot of enemies on the screen at one point. So right now doing around 150, 56 FPS. I'm gonna jump back into the settings now, and I'm gonna disable just the fluid motion part, just the frame generation part. I'm still gonna keep upscaling on. So we've come down from 156 FPS all the way down to 92, so back into the double digits. So there was at least a 60 FPS uptick there. Of course, that's not gonna feel like 60 FPS in terms of like responsiveness, but even so, the optics look good in terms of what it can actually do to boost frame rate. So I'm just gonna run around now to some other points of interest just to show you how smooth the game plays without fluid motion. This was one of the only problems I had with the game, that it just had too many frame spikes to feel smooth. And there were 1 and 2 while I was fighting, but not so many. A few more enemies around here. At least this time there was a more manageable amount of enemies coming my way. That's a puzzle that I haven't got time to solve right now. But as you can see, there's a massive difference in frame rate from enabling fluid motion frame generation and having it disabled. And you're probably wondering, how does the game perform with native and FSR together? Well, I'll demonstrate that as well. So if I was to disable, actually what they've actually added is a native AA option. Now what this does is it doesn't upscale the game in any way, but it does replace the native anti-aliasing that came with the game, and that you may find that better than what's implemented. And I want to show you what the game looks like without any upscaling. So the RTX 4090 only managing around 54, 55 FPS. As I said before, this game is extremely demanding, and as you can see, it's kind of looks a little bit laggy now. It doesn't look as responsive, and it certainly doesn't feel as responsive as well. And this is definitely not the way you want to play this game. So if I now enable fluid motion without any upscaling, I should get around 100 frames per second. So you get about a 50 FPS uptick, between 50 and 60, even without upscaling. So whether or not you're using upscaling or not, you still get the same amount of boost. But even so, it still feels like 50, 54 FPS. It doesn't really feel like it's improved the game. I would have to say at the moment, DLSS 3 at 40 FPS native feels a lot better than this. Feels a lot better than FSR 3 at 100 FPS. So for example, if I was to enable DLSS 3 now, frame generation, if it was possible, and say I was getting similar frames, it would feel better than this. And I know this because I've done this in Cyberpunk 2077, and it feels miles better with DLAA. Even hitting frames as low as 60 FPS, it still felt like a native 60, whereas this doesn't feel like a native 60. This feels like 50 to 55 FPS. So the best way to use fluid motion is just to use it with some type of upscaling. When you do both things at the same time, it feels amazing. So if you're using it like this, it feels great, and that's how I recommend you play the game. Now what I'm going to do is show you a side-by-side comparison to end things. The game does have an in-game benchmark, but it's really just to show off direct storage and how fast scenes can load, but it also will give me a controlled environment where I can show you FPS side by side. Some more crocodiles here. Let's take these guys out. Melee works better on these guys. I'm more vulnerable. They're vulnerable to water as well somehow. Who'd have thought? Oh, one or two enemies behind me. Okay, that is all the enemies taken down now. So I'm going to leave it there, guys. I'm going to leave you with the comparison side by side so you can see the difference in performance. But that is pretty much it for me. The good thing about FrameGen, of course, is it is open. So whether you got Intel Arc, NVIDIA or AMD, you can use this feature, which is pretty awesome. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. And as always, thanks for watching.